It's just gone 4 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Good afternoon, everyone, those people over east and, of course, those people in West Australia. It's nice to be able to say the same time as opposed to good morning in the west and good afternoon in the east. It's good afternoon or good evening. This webinar is about how to reduce nerves and speak with increased confidence. And I guess the key essence right up front is it's the reduction or the controlling of the nerves as opposed to the elimination. Those of you who would like to have the magic pill that will completely reduce the nerves or eliminate the nerves so that you begin speaking with no nerves, I am afraid I do not have that magic pill or that magic wand. A few more people still joining. We're just getting started as we go. We're just starting right as we speak. So it's about reducing nerves. Some rules for the day. If you have a question, raise your hand. You should have a little dialogue box where you can raise your hand. Just put your hand up, and if you have a microphone and I can see on my screen if you do or you don't, then I will open up the microphone. If you don't want the microphone open up, when you put your hand up, type in the dialogue box, type in your question, and I'll be able to answer the question from what you've written in. Please ask questions as we go. If I say something that interests you or triggers some thoughts, please type those questions. As I see them coming, if I know I'm going to cover them, I may delay my answer, but that's not to stop you from asking questions as they arise. I've also got a couple of slides throughout just with a question mark where I will pause and give you a few moments to gather your thoughts and ask any questions thus far. Most of you know me, but a couple of you may not know me. Peter Dew's my name, and I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and my absolute passion, my absolute desire is to help people find their voice so that they can get their point of view across, have their say, contribute to society both confidently but also effectively. So there's two arms, I guess, to the public speaking. There's the confidence, and then there's the effectiveness. Some people are really confident, but they lack the impact. Some people are quite effective, yet they are really nervous and anxious and feel they're not doing a good job because of their lack of confidence. Today's workshop is about the confidence, the reducing nerves. A little bit about myself, just very briefly. Most of you know I've got a background as a person who stutters, so my unique selling proposition, my uniqueness as a public speaking trainer is that I went through life for a long time not being able to public speak, and indeed it was my overwhelming fear and just almost impossible for me to public speak because of my stutter, my fear, my anxiety, and of course my concerns about ridicule and nerves. So public speaking is indeed a fear, and just the mere sight of a microphone or just the mere invitation to say a few words before an audience is enough to put fear into many people. You probably know that public speaking is often reported as mankind's number one fear, and dying is number two. So apparently many of us would rather die ahead of public speaking. And when you look at that, it really does put into perspective, I guess, the impact that the fear of public speaking has on people. Nobody wants to die, but to put that fear of public speaking ahead of dying is really quite bizarre. But as a public speaking trainer, over the years, I can see how genuine, how real, how debilitating that fear is for those people that are anxious before speaking. So my aim in this short webinar is to give each of you some background knowledge and hopefully 1 or 2 tips that will help you get ready, be more confident, reduce your nerves before your next presentation. Mark Twain made this famous quote: "There's only 2 types of speakers in the world, the nervous and the liars." So the role of nerves, amazingly, nerves do play a role in public speaking. And one of the myths that I guess I can dispel straight away is that you should be completely calm before public speaking. You should have no nerves before you stand on the platform. And of course the answer to that is no, you should. You should not have no nerves. You should have a healthy level of nervousness, a healthy level of anxiety. So one of the myths is that you need to be totally calm, nerve-free, and a very low anxiety level before speaking. And that's a pure myth. Another little acronym that I like that helps me understand fear, the role of fear in public speaking, the role of nerves, the role of anxiety, and that's false expectations appearing real. I've also heard it called false evidence appearing real. So we have this fear that something's going to happen, we're going to be judged, people are going to think poorly of us, we're taking a risk standing up in front of a group of people. And of course, 80% of what we worry about, as you're probably aware of, 80% of what we worry about, our concerns, our energy, doesn't happen. 80% doesn't happen. So that's a lot of energy, that's a lot of worry, that's a lot of nerves about things that actually don't eventuate. So that small acronym that unpacks fear just works for me extremely well. False expectations appearing real. Now, when I do my public speaking workshops, and I know some of you have been to my workshops, one of the things I do, certainly with the introductory workshops, Overcoming Your Fear of Public Speaking, is I do an anxiety reality check. And this can be a nervousness reality check, just how worried, how nervous, how anxious you are about speaking. What I do in the workshops is I get people to stand up in front of the group and speak for 1 minute. And after they've spoken for 1 minute, I get them to just give me a rating on how that felt for them. Where 10 is really high, above 10 is often called a near-death experience, 5 is in the medium, and 1 is really calm, really cool, really collected. Below 1, you are probably asleep. Now what happens is that almost universally people report their anxiety around 7 or 8. Some people said it was above 10. One gentleman once said to me that, Peter, as I was speaking, I was digging my grave as I was going. I was dying up there. But most people report around 7 or 8, quite nervous, really anxious. I then go to the audience, those people who've just watched this 1 minute presentation off the cuff. It's not a difficult question. And I say to the audience, disregard that comment you've just heard from the speaker. Disregard how they've just rated themselves. From what I asked them to do, the 3 points that I asked them to cover in that 1 minute introduction speech, where would you rate them on what you saw? Not what the person told you in terms of their own anxiety, but what you saw as an audience. Universally, people say 3 or 4, 4, maybe 4 or 5, 2 or 3. This is one of the universal laws of public speaking. Wherever you see yourself, wherever you rate yourself on your anxiety scale, and that's not to dismiss what's happening to you, your heart is pounding, your palms are sweaty, and you may have a genuine quiver in your voice. Your mouth may be dry. Just recognize The audience only sees 50% of what is happening for you. 50%. So what that means is that you are already doing twice as good as you give yourself credit for. Twice as good in the audience's eyes, from the perspective of the audience. Does everyone know the 3 rules of real estate? I think it's location, location, location. Well, the 3 rules of public speaking are audience, audience, audience. It's about the audience. It's not about you. The audience sees you around about 3 or 4 in your confidence level, then you need to recognize and accept that you've done a very good job for that audience. This does not mean that you're not nervous up around here, but do recognize that the audience is seeing you twice as good, 200% better than you give yourself credit for. Now, the beauty of this is, if you are up around a 7 or 8, let's say an 8, imagine, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about this later on, imagine if you could bring your anxiety level down to 7. 1 notch. I'm not asking you to eliminate the nerves. I'm not asking you to be absolutely calm, but you've come down 1 level. What the audience sees is you go from 3 or 4 down to a 2 or 3, which frankly is confident, in the groove and doing a great job. Hence, you don't have to eliminate nerves. There's only 2 kinds of speakers in the world, the nervous and those that are liars, according to Mark Twain. Have a healthy level of anxiety. It puts you in your peak performance mode. If you came in and presented with no nerves and your own anxiety level was around 2 or 3, you know what the audience would see you as? You know how the audience would perceive you? They would perceive you as uninterested, flat, lacking energy, just going through the motions, because you're so calm that you're not in your peak performance mode. Your hands up, Terry. Type. I don't see a microphone to open up for you, so type into the question box and I will answer your question. So you don't want to be too, well, put your hand down, Terry, but please type the question in if you want to. You don't want to be around here as a speaker. Remember, it's audience, audience, audience. You want the audience to see you around there. For you to be around there, you need to have probably 5, 6, maybe even 7 level of anxiety. So that's the anxiety reality check. You don't have to be calm, nor should you be calm. It would be a little bit risky to be completely calm. If we take this same analogy, the nervousness, to an elite athlete, the Olympic Games are around the corner. If you're on the starting blocks for the 100-metre sprint, the 4x100-metre relay, or the 100-metre breaststroke, or some other swimming stroke, and you've done all this hard work over the last 4, 5, 6 years. You've come through the heats. You're now there in the final, gold medal. Glory is just seconds away. Where do you think that athlete's anxiety level would be? If it was 7, 8 or 9, there's a chance that they would jump the starter's gun. They would fire too quick and be disqualified, or the relay team would drop the baton due to that unhealthy, too high level of anxiety. However, if their anxiety level was around a 2 or 3, so they're quite calm, they'll probably miss the starter's gun. They'll be last off the blocks because they'll be lethargic, they'll be flat. So 5 or 6 is a good level of anxiety for an athlete. 5 or 6 is a good level of anxiety for a public speaker, for a presenter. So the first rule for you is that Nerves are a part of public speaking. The level of anxiety and the level of nerves you have, the audience do not see. Any questions at this stage? The role of anxiety, the role of nerves. Put your hands up. I'll open up your microphone, or feel free to type in a question. Fire away, Michelle.
I'm just wondering that if we're able to reduce our level of nerves, will we lose that quiver in the voice? Will that get less, and the shakiness that we usually worry about that gives us away?
Thanks for that question, Michelle. Michelle said if we just lower the level of nerves a little bit, will that quiver, that shakiness of our voice that sometimes gives away our nervousness, will that go away? Two things there. Firstly, yes, if you do have a quiver in your voice associated with nervousness, less nervousness will reduce the quiver. The other thing that I notice with public speaking workshops is that those people who report a quiver, a shake in their voice, most members in the audience don't hear it or don't detect it. Occasionally someone who is a close colleague will say, that's not your normal speaking voice, but the rest of the audience is unaware of that. Now, a couple of things that may help. If you do have a quiver or nervousness in your voice, don't drink milk products before speaking. That includes soy milk or skim milk. So the skinny flat white or the flat white or the soy flat white or the latte, the milk on cereal, 2 to 3 hours before speaking should go. The opera singers use raw egg. I'm not keen on drinking raw egg myself. Pineapple juice is number 2 and apple juice is number 3. They act more as a lubricant. Of course, hydrate your vocal apparatus with water 2 hours before speaking anyhow, but while you're doing the gig you can sip pineapple juice or apple juice, and just before the gig, just before the presentation. So that's one thing that will help you. The second thing is if you have dry mouth, and this tip comes from a really great speaker in Sydney, Alan Parker, Peak Performance. If you ever get a chance to see Alan Parker speak, I would recommend that you attend. Alan Parker has a tip for dry mouth, and sometimes the dry mouth can also cause a little bit of a croakiness in the voice. And I've actually tried this tip and it works. Take a Tic Tac and wedge it between your top lip and your gum, and it should just wedge there to the side just nicely and leave it there. You can talk, you can speak. It'll be a little bit uncomfortable at first. No one will know it's there. That'll stay there for 3 hours before it dissolves. What it does is it makes you salivate. Not profusely, but salivate a lot. With this salivation, of course, you're lubricating and the mouth's moist, but also, how do you get rid of a mouthful of saliva? You stop, you pause, and you breathe. And people that come to my workshops know that the pause, the breathing, is very important part of creating impact and just engaging the audience. The pause is really powerful. So some people who speak too fast that don't have dry mouth, this is another way of increasing their pauses. They need to swallow to get rid of the saliva that the Tic Tac is, that the result of the Tic Tac is creating the saliva production. So I guess a couple of tips: use your pineapple, your apple juice, eliminate your milk. If you do have dry mouth, and that's sometimes, you know, the nerves and you're waiting to be introduced and you just notice your mouth's dry, take water or apple juice up with you. It is okay to stop mid-presentation to have a drink. When I put the question mark up, I moved my mic away and I was drinking water. And of course, coming down one level on your anxiety scale will reduce the quiver, the waver in your voice. And ultimately, most of the audience won't know that you do have that quiver. So thanks for that question, Michelle. Rather a long-winded answer, but a couple of tips there that might help with other aspects of public speaking. Of course, the caffeine. So I've taken away the latte for you, or the skinny flat white. If you're not a long black or an espresso, then, and you like your caffeine, then of course the Coke or the Red Bull gives you that caffeine and that energy boost maybe that you need before you go on stage. I need my caffeine in the morning. I'm lucky I can drink a long black. I enjoy a long black, and that's what I do before I speak. Brilliant. Thanks for your question. Some of you know that one of my favourite authors and one of the people that helped me in my journey as a person who stutters to now doing public speaking training, but even before that, just getting on with my life, was Dr. Susan Jeffers. Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Probably the #1 best-selling self-help book over the last 25 years. In fact, right now, if you want to order a book, it would be the 25th anniversary. So if you're going to buy one of these Feel the Fear books, just hold off for a bit. If you're going to Dymocks, just hold off a bit, or check when they're going to get the 25th special edition, which has been released in the UK and America, and I imagine is not far away. The 5 truths about fear, according to Dr. Susan Jeffers, that I share with you. They're not rocket science. The fear will never go away as long as you continue to grow. The fear of public speaking will never go away as long as you continue to grow. If your job, if a promotion, if leadership, if job interviews require more public speaking, the only way to avoid that fear of public speaking is not to grow. So guys, if you want to grow, if you want to achieve, you've got to keep working towards that fear. Now, if your fear is not stopping you from growing, you don't have to do it. I have a huge fear of jumping out of an aeroplane with a parachute. It scares the living daylights out of me. In fact, I don't understand why anybody would even do it, and I've got no desire to do it. But it's not going to hold me back. Public speaking, putting your point of view across, interrupting a meeting and saying something that may be a little bit contentious and having the courage to say that, that's part of you growing, whether it's in the workplace or in everyday life when you need to say something. The wedding speech, my daughter's 21st speech. These are important things. So as long as you grow, not only in public speaking but in life in general, you will always have to face fear on that journey. The only way to get rid of a fear of doing something is to go out and do it. In my opening remarks, I apologise that I don't have the magic pill, the magic wand that's going to eliminate your fear. You need to work on reducing your nerves and controlling your fear, and the only way to do that is to go out and do it. If you've got a fear of heights, you need to gradually go up some stairs, maybe 2 flights of stairs and then 5 flights of stairs. I would not go up the tallest building in the world as my first step in overcoming my fear of heights. So the only way to get rid of a fear of doing something is to go out and do it. The only way to feel better about yourself, I should have applied for that job. I should have said something at that meeting. That was my idea, but someone else said it. Is to go out and do it. The only way to feel better about yourself is to go out and do it. The only way to feel better about yourself around if your public speaking is holding you back is to go out and to do it. Not only will I experience fear whenever I'm on unfamiliar territory, so does everyone else. Not only do you feel fear when you're about to speak, but so does Peter Dew. Peter Dew feels fear before he's waiting to start a webinar, wondering how he will go. That fear is there for everyone. So those people you admire, those people that seem to go out and get it, they've got the same fears. Maybe they've just worked through them earlier on in their lives. Maybe they don't let you know that they're afraid of what they're doing. Maybe they keep that fear at a healthy level, but they don't let it hold them back. So when you admire someone else who goes out and tries something different, just recognize they also experience fear. Now, yesterday, I was lucky enough to be speaking down in Dunsborough in the Margaret River area, south of West Australia, and one of the keynote speakers was Shelley Taylor-Smith, 7 times world champion for distance swimming, holds the world record for the swimming marathon, or held the world record for the swimming marathon for women and for men. Swam across the English Channel, swam around New York, swam from Sydney up to Newcastle, 90 kilometres. She has a horrendous fear of sharks. And she showed a slide of her before she did the Sydney to Newcastle swim, going in a tank of sharks with a diver, just to realise that the sharks are not necessarily going to attack her, just to overcome or address her fear. So this is one of the most powerful people that I've ever met or heard speak, and she swims with sharks and has a fear of sharks. So not only do I have a fear of sharks, but so does the world champion of 7 years who does long distance marathon swimming. The 5th fear, pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from the feeling of helplessness. You want to do something, but you can't. I was offered earlier on in my career as a medical scientist to go to Singapore and present a paper. My response to my boss was, no, I'm too busy. I don't have time to do that. Send the second in charge. Send my second in charge. They can present the paper quite well. Guys, here's a trip to Singapore, fully paid, 5-star hotel, conference. Stay a couple of days while you're there, enjoy your time, and I've said no. Imagine how helpless I felt. And this colleague of mine, wasn't even his research, it was my research, gets to go on this trip. So pushing through the fear is in fact less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from the helplessness. I guess the debilitating effect of not feeling powerful enough to say what you want to say, just holding back. Susan Jeffers, The 5 Truths About Fear. Pause for a moment. Any questions? And Shelley Taylor-Smith's, I guess her legacy will be that she was responsible for the fact that women now get equal prize money on international sports, because in the marathons they don't separate the men and the women, and she came in first ahead of the men and ahead of the women. And so for the first man that was beaten by 5 minutes on the 35 kilometres by Shelley Taylor-Smith to receive higher prize money than her was just completely silly. And as we know, in the tennis and the golf, generally the prize money for the men and the women is now equal. So that's her legacy. An amazing athlete. Okay, Edward, let me open up your microphone. We haven't tested it, Edward. You got a question?
No. Yeah, I'm just a comment, I suppose. Can you hear me right?
Yes, I can. You still there? You've just dropped out, Edward. Okay, we could hear Edward. Edward, you're back.
Yeah, you got me now?
Yep.
Oh, cool. I do get nervous speaking with groups.
Yes.
I seem to find it better with Indigenous people than non-Indigenous.
Yes.
How can I sort of change that?
Okay. Thanks for your question, Edward. Edward's said he's more comfortable, he gets a little bit nervous with speaking and more comfortable speaking with Indigenous people than non-Indigenous people. And if I can take that a little bit further, some people say, I'm very comfortable speaking in a small group, 3 or 4 or 5 people, but as soon as you put me in front of a crowd of 20, 30, I really get quite nervous. And I guess 2 comments I can say. Certainly with Indigenous people, I know that they're a lot more laid back, a lot more relaxed, and of course often their meeting table, their meeting room is sitting around a tree. And their meeting style is yarning, is telling stories and just having a chat, and you know, and very respectful, very respectful. And when you're having a chat with people, it's sort of more conversational and there's less pressure on you. Not sure if this helps you at all, but the persona, the attitude that you have with the Indigenous people, the persona, the attitude that you have with the one-on-one conversation, the chat, the yarn with friends, the conversational style should be the exact style that you take onto the platform. So let me challenge you. Remove public speaking, remove presentation skills from your vocabulary. So from now on, every time you get before a group of people, Edward, regardless of whether they're Indigenous or not, just have a chat, just have a conversation with the room, one person at a time. There may be a sea of 100 faces, but just have a chat with one individual at a time, using your eye contact, a few milliseconds on one person, down the back of the room, down to the front, across to the right side, over to the left side. Spend a few seconds on each person. 2 to 4 seconds is long enough, is acceptable eye contact when you're speaking to a group of people. So that's now 2, 3, 4, 5, lots of 3 seconds. Connect with those people. And if speaking to Indigenous people is easier, just come in with the same attitude. Maybe the crowd is going to be a bit harder to crack, but if you can just come in with that conversational, that yarning style, the true you, how you interact with the Indigenous people, then that is who you should be on stage. If you're not, Edward, if you're not how you are speaking with Indigenous people, then you'll have artificially become someone else and you're no longer genuine. There's another saying, another important part of public speaking. Who you are on the stage needs to be who you are off the stage. So it's not a big over-the-top performance, and then when people chat to you afterwards, you sort of talk differently, you're not the same person, because then people will realise you're not congruent, you're not really the real person they've seen on the stage. So who you are with the Indigenous people could in fact be who you really are, Edward, and if you can capture that, take it on to the platform, that would help you. Who you are when you're chatting with people one-on-one, try and take that same person on the platform. Thanks for your question. I've told you about nerves, the role of anxiety, and some of you might be saying, okay, brilliant, Peter, we understand it. It's part of public speaking, but that doesn't help us at all. I want to reduce my nerves. Some of you have been to my workshop, you will have seen this before. This is my prime yourself to speak model. It's just an acronym. I like acronyms. It helps me remember things. Preparation is the basis, the pyramid, the building blocks of your becoming more confident, of reducing nerves. Do your preparation. Learn to relax. So that anxiety, that quiver in the voice, maybe some deep breathing, some visualization. Immersion, this means do more of it. Many people who come to my workshops, they come along and say, oh, Peter, I'm doing a conference in 3 weeks' time in front of 1,000 people. So I thought I'd do this workshop. How much public speaking do you do at the moment, I ask? And of course their answer is, I speak maybe once or twice a year. Really tough to become confident and learn to control nerves and be effective with such infrequent public speaking. You've got to do lots of it. My challenge to everyone is get on your feet once a week. Another challenge, if you're not nervous, if you're not anxious, then it's not big enough for you. If you're not feeling nervous, and this is not just about public speaking, if you're taking on a project and you've got no anxiety, you've got no nerves, it's not big enough. Monitor and measure. This is feedback. If I put F in there for feedback, it wouldn't spell anything. So I've put measure yourself, monitor how you're going, get feedback from other people's eyes. I mentioned in my opening comments, people's anxiety levels are up here, but the audience sees your anxiety levels down here. How do you know that? You need to get feedback from the audience. Gee, Edward, you looked really confident. That was very effective, and I loved what you had to say. That doesn't mean you weren't dying up there, Edward, but if the audience says that you've done a good job, then you've done a good job. Remember the 3 rules of public speaking? But you've taken public speaking out of your vocabulary, but the 3 rules of getting before a group of people: audience, audience, audience. It's not about you. So if you're dying and the audience says, wow, brilliant, okay, you just have to acknowledge that. That's where the monitor and the measure, the feedback helps. And gradually you need to expand your comfort zone. I mentioned with the 5 truths of fear, if you wanted to overcome a fear of heights, I wouldn't go from a fear of heights to the highest building in the world, that tower you find in Dubai. I would not do that. That's a huge step. I wouldn't come to one of my public speaking workshops and then in 3 weeks' time go to a national conference with 1,000 people. That's a huge leap of faith. That's really tough. Gradually expand your comfort zone. Let me go through these one by one. So the preparation in the prime model, 3 levels of preparation I talk about, and the preparation is getting you ready. The preparation is eliminating all the what ifs, the what if this happens, the what if this goes wrong, all of those things that can add to your nerves and your anxiety. What if the audience doesn't like me? What if my message misses the mark? Okay, know your audience. Do your research, do pre-workshop questionnaires, find out as much about your audience as you can. What are their expectations? Google them. Look at, if you're doing an in-house organisation, look at their mission, their vision. What are their values? How are they going to dress? What level should they dress? I'm sure all of you on television recently saw the incident with the previous speaker in the lower house, Peter Slipper. Peter Slipper turned up at an RSL function in Queensland as the keynote speaker. All of the RSL, the servicemen, the volunteers, the soldiers were at this function dressed with suits, ties, all their medals. It was a fairly important occasion from their point of view. Peter Slipper turned up in really daggy grey faded jeans and a casual farming type shirt with the neck open at the collar, and he presented. He got absolutely pasted in the media. People were talking behind his back as he was delivering the keynote address. He wasn't ready for his audience. He wasn't ready for his audience. I tell a story of a friend of mine who is blind, who goes out speaking, and he gets a gift. He doesn't get paid, he gets a gift. So he goes to Rotary, Lions Club, Apex clubs, high schools. He gets a gift to say thank you. The most common gift this blind man gets is a book. Not a talking book, not a CD book, a book that you read. So the headmaster, the president of the Lions Club, who is now speaking and thanking the speaker, hasn't done his preparation. And he must look really silly as he says, thanks for, enlightening us about the difficulties of sight-impaired people and the role of seeing eye dogs. And on behalf of everyone here, I'd like you to accept this book. I wonder when the penny drops. Know your venue. One of the big mistakes, I was just down, as I mentioned, in Dunsborough, Margaret River area. Shelley Taylor-Smith was speaking. Someone else spoke as well. Rocked up relatively late, about 10 minutes before he was about to speak. Got organised, went on, and his sound system did not work. He had a handheld microphone. There was 120 people in the room. So when he played his little videos that were embedded in his PowerPoint slides, he had to give the microphone to someone to run around the back and hold the microphone to the speakers in his laptop so that they would then come out so we could all hear the video. Then when the video stopped, the guy would run around and give him the microphone back. It looked quite unprofessional. Know your venue. Get there early. Practice. Sit in some of the seats. Get an idea of what it looks like from the audience's perspective. Walk on the platform. Are there any problems you have to be aware of? Don't fall off the platform like Jimmy Buffett did in Sydney when he was doing that gig last year. Singing great songs, full house, falls off the stage, breaks his leg, ends up in hospital. Know your topic so you can plug and pay. Don't know your notes. Don't rewrite notes. The way to practice is on your feet. The way to practice is not at the typewriter, not at the word processor, not refining, rewording, looking for better language. The way to practice is on your feet speaking. Your notes should be bullet points, but your topic should be such that you can plug and play. So if you do use PowerPoint and the power goes off, you can still present. So that if someone speaks into your time and you've got to cut your time in half, you can still deliver your content, your core message in half the time. If someone doesn't turn up and the chairman asks you to stretch your time for an extra 15 minutes, you should be able to do that. So that no matter what happens, you can still present. If the fire alarm went off and you're outside in the assembly area, in the muster point, nice day, could you present your topic, your content without the PowerPoint, without the laptop, without all the other material? You should be able to. It just gives you the confidence so that you don't have to worry about what if I forget or what if I make a mistake. You know your content so well. Practice on your feet. Practice on your feet. Spectacular performance is always preceded by spectacular preparation. Robert Schuller. Whether you're going to succeed as a presenter on that gig, on that performance, is determined before you take the platform. It's sometimes called the iceberg model. So this is your preparation. This is below the level of the water. This is what the audience sees, just the tip of the iceberg. 70% of your presentation occurs before you take the stage. Preparation. Really important. Learn to relax. I'm not going to teach you how to relax. You know what I want you to do. I want you to bring your anxiety level from a 7 down to a 6, or from an 8 to a 7, one notch on your anxiety scale. You can decide whether it's yoga, meditation, deep breathing, visualization, shoulder shrugs, relaxation, what works for you. Bring yourself one notch down. As a person who stutters, it was the relaxation techniques that helped me breathe and get control of my nerves so that I could put my speech therapy, my fluency technique into practice. While I did lots of preparation and the speech therapist helped me not to stutter, without being able to control my nerves through relaxation, I struggled and struggled and struggled. This is the R in the prime model. You've done your preparation. Learn to relax quickly. Bring yourself down from a 7 to a 6, from an 8 to a 7, from a 9 to an 8, one notch. I mentioned immerse yourself. If I stole Nike's saying, just do it. Anthony Robbins Tony Robbins, probably the highest paid speaker in the world, in his book and his workshops, Awaken the Giant Within, states that repetition is the mother of skill. You need to do it. Earlier on I said some people say they speak once or twice a year. Really tough to overcome your fear, really tough to reduce nerves, really tough to get control of your anxiety. How can you get on your feet once a week? Volunteer to chair more meetings. If your meetings are boring, volunteer to do a 5-minute case study on something that you've found that's interesting each week. Form a mastermind group, other people that want to become more confident in speaking, and meet with them once a week over lunch and find a topic that you're all interested in and speak and present for 5 minutes and give them feedback. Do community presentations, Lions, Apex, Rotary, schools. You won't get paid, but those community groups are always looking for volunteer speakers. Join a public speaking club. Toastmasters is international. Rostrum is an Australia-wide public speaking club. Penguin is an Australia-wide public speaking club. Penguin Club is for female speakers only. So I can't tell you what goes on during a Penguin Club. I've been to Toastmasters Club. I was a Toastmaster myself for a long time. I still am. I've been to Rostrum clubs. Get on your feet. I don't mind how. You need to create the opportunities so that you can get on your feet once a week instead of once or twice per year. Repetition is the mother of skill. Feedback. Feedback is the food of champions, bringing in the sporting analogy again. Feedback. Champions eat feedback for breakfast. How do you know that you don't have that quiver in your voice that you spoke about? How do you know that you're doing a really good job from the audience's perspective? How do you know? How do you know if you are doing something that you could improve? Give someone permission to give you feedback. Now, it must be specific, must be immediate, must be honest. Immediate after the day. Don't in 6 months' time say, oh, by the way, how did I go at that talk you attended? And don't say, how did I go? Because they'll say, yep, that was good. That was good. How do you improve with that feedback? How do you improve when someone says that was good? Let them know. And someone would say, I have a bit of a quiver in my voice. I notice you're sitting in the middle of the room. Can you let me know if you can pick that quiver up? Give them permission to be honest. If you want to work on your gestures, your body language, practice in front of the mirror for 5 minutes. And of course, the ultimate feedback is video record yourself. So this is still the feedback, monitor and measuring. Video record yourself. People have smartphones, even your cameras nowadays, digital cameras can record video quite easily. 5 minutes, look at it, listen to your voice. Is that quiver there? Does the quiver matter? What's your eye contact doing? What are your gestures doing? Watch the video and look at the speaker. Don't look too long at yourself or you'll start to get too critical of you as opposed to what is it the speaker is doing in that video. What is the speaker doing well and what could the speaker do differently to make that even better? Okay, feedback. And finally, expand your comfort zone. This is a no-brainer. I've mentioned about going from my workshops to the national conference. It's huge. I would practice several times in front of a group of people at work, my family. I would practice weekly. I'd practice daily for a couple of weeks. I'd then join a Toastmasters club where there's 15, 20 people. I'd try and do a state conference before I do a national conference, and gradually I'd expand my comfort zone. When you do this a lot, so you decide to chair meetings and you decide to present at meetings, when you do this, all of a sudden this becomes your new comfort zone. So you can move that original zone of comfort and cut it off there. So now a Toastmasters just becomes a little step instead of a big step. Once you've been going to Toastmasters for a year, like I was, I became quite comfortable. So I had to start entering public speaking contests, speaking with the top speakers in other clubs, representing WA on interstate competitions. Then I speak at conferences. Now what do? I do public speaking training and coaching. I stand up in front of hundreds of people and speak for my living. That's my new zone of comfort. It's taken a while to get there. Expand your comfort zone. Some risk-taking may be required. That new bowl of water, that promotion looks a lot nicer, bigger world, lots of interesting things there. Sometimes you might fall a little bit short, but this little guy looks pretty determined that he's going to get there. Some risk-taking may be required. So let's prime yourself to speak. Do your preparation, and then you eliminate a lot of the what-ifs. Learn to relax so that you can bring yourself down that anxiety level just one little bit. Do more of it. Immerse yourself. Do more of it. Monitor, measure, get the feedback. That's going to help you grow as well and be more aware that you're doing a good job. And finally, take a risk. Expand your comfort zone. Any questions? I'll pause for a moment before we wrap up. No hands going up at the moment. Okay. In summary, and feel free to contact me via email if you have any questions or any particular things that maybe you didn't want to discuss during today's webinar. So the first thing is understand the role of fear. Fear is important. It puts us in our peak performance mode, that fight or flight mode where we really perform well. We don't want it so high that we freeze or that we become unfunctional or dysfunctional. We don't want it so low that we become ho-hum, uninterested, flat. So fear has a role. The 5 truths about fear. Everyone else feels fear as well. So recognize that. Fear is a part of life. As you grow and expand, you will feel fear. Recognize that you're doing better than you think. So this is your anxiety reality check. From your point of view, the audience is seeing you twice as good. The 3 rules of presenting, bearing in mind I've taken public speaking out of your vocabulary, is audience, audience, audience. Recognize the audience sees you twice as good as you give yourself credit for. And finally, to further grab control of the nerves and bring them to a level that you want, and to be effective as a public speaker, use the PRIME model. Preparation, relaxation, immersion, monitor, measure, and expand your comfort zone. Prime yourself to speak. Use that model. Preparation is in fact the cornerstone of speaking more confidently and of controlling nerves. Any last questions? While you're thinking of any last questions, my email details, my website, you know that I have a free newsletter that you can sign up. Just go to the website and you'll see newsletter, sign up. When you've had enough, when you get bored with my newsletter, it's only once a month, then you can unsubscribe. The next webinar is in the morning, so some of you may not have been able to attend, and of course you're not here, so this sounds stupid. Some people would not have been able to attend, so maybe the morning webinar will suit them. This webinar is about gestures, the really powerful public speaking tool of gestures, and how your body language can be used to be more effective, can be used to, bring on that leadership role, and in fact conveys half of your message. If you haven't had a chance to, and it's really just the number you need to write down. Everything else is www.go2meeting.com, register, and then the number. If you don't get that, email me and I will send you the link. You've probably got the link already. My next workshops, if you want to take the step and go beyond just dealing with nerves and anxiety and do a more intense public speaking workshop in Perth, 31st of May, that is set and ready to go. And Melbourne, I've got 2 dates, and I think I'll run it twice, the 9th of August and the 3rd of September. Sydney, I don't have any dates at the moment. And of course, these workshops I can also run in-house. So if you feel that you've got 8 to 12 people in your organisation that would benefit from some effective presentation skills, controlling anxiety, putting together winning presentation skills, then I'm happy to come across and do those presentations, those workshops. There's a gap between May and August. From the 10th of June to 20th of July, I'm going to be overseas visiting my daughter in London, so I will be checking emails, but I won't be running any webinars or workshops during that time. So, understand the role of fear. Recognize you're doing better than you think and prime yourself to speak. From what you've heard today, my challenge to you is, what 2 things will you do differently the next time you are asked to speak, the next time you prepare to speak? Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. So if you listen to this webinar, if some of what I said rings true or creates a few aha moments, and you go out after this evening, this afternoon, and do the same thing, you're unlikely to get a different outcome. So my challenge to you is, what 2 things from what you've heard today can you do differently? Can you consider, can you challenge yourself to do starting tomorrow and then starting next week? I look forward to when you're on the next webinar, and please go out there, make a difference. Fear is part of public speaking. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And I will end the webinar there. Thank you for your attendance.